This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides and magazines specifically at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out! Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading!
Live from Brussels, this is The Late Late Show with Jeff Pedley, and you are listening live.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to The Late Late Show. Tonight I will be exploring curriculum design and enhancement with my special guest, Martin Robinson. With over 20 years experience as a teacher and school leader and everything in between before becoming a successful writer, Martin has recently released a book called Curriculum Revolutions, which aims to be a practical guide to enhancing what you teach.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org or join in the conversation by downloading the Podbean app and following Teachers Talk Radio. #TT Radio.
Hello, thank you for joining me tonight on this Thursday evening on the 18th of January. How do you design your curriculum? What are your priorities? How much autonomy do your teachers have, or do they think they have? How do you audit the quality of your curriculum? Hopefully, Martin will help us answer a few of these questions and more tonight. However, if you would like to get involved, remember you can contact us at TT Radio Official on Twitter and the usual social media outlets, or my personal handle at Jeff_Pedley, JEFF_PEDLEY. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest tonight, who is Martin Robinson, who has worked in East London State Schools for more than 20 years as a teacher, head of department, head of faculty, advanced skills teacher, and as a school leader. For the past 10 years, he has worked as an educational consultant, delivering CPD, workshops and keynote speeches about curriculum design, teaching methodology and culture, both in the UK and around the world. And he has recently released a book through John Catt Publications called Curriculum Revolutions, which is a practical guide to enhancing what you teach. Hello, Martin. How are we today?
Hello, Jeff. I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. You've said you've had a little bit of a problem with toothache this morning.
I have this morning, yeah, but I'm sure I'll soldier on through, as they say.
Thank you so much for joining me. I know it's been a very busy Christmas period, etc., and trying to get this done. I'm really excited to be talking to you today about curriculum design, really, and the book that you've got out, Curriculum Revolutions. Just to start with, could you give me a little bit of information about your background? You were a secondary school teacher beforehand?
Before I wrote this, and I've been let's think, for the last 10 years I've been an education consultant for my sins, and I've written, this is my fourth book. Before that I was a teacher for 20 years in northeast London in state schools. I was mainly, not all the time, but mainly a teacher of drama, and taught a bit of English and media studies on the side with PSHE, of course, and also a leader, as they say, going into senior leadership teams and that sort of thing. And an AST, an advanced skills teacher. So I must be good. Must be good.
Definitely, I've got no doubt about it. What was your favourite subject to teach?
Oh, drama, yeah, without a doubt, yeah.
Why drama?
Because you could do what you damn well wanted to, really, and no one understood it. You know, the senior team would just look through the door and in abject horror at what was going on there, and there were no desks to see children sat at, and no pens and paper for them to scrawl on, and they were just screaming and shouting and running around as far as senior management could work out.
I think that leads nicely onto my first question. So you've recently released a book called Curriculum Revolutions, which is a John Catt publication, and The main focus of this book is, well, as a subtitle, as a practical guide to enhancing what you teach. Now, the focus on curriculum, there's, of course, a heavy focus on curriculum design. And I'm quite interested in what you observed of curriculum design at the start of your career.
Yeah, so I suppose my own experience was being asked to teach, here's a job, and then get on with it. I wasn't given anything at all in terms of what lessons to teach, in what order to teach them or anything. There was a stock cupboard in the English department, and with a file in it with schemes of work that I could take should I so wish. And obviously there would be sets of novels and poems and things like that if you weren't there quick enough, all the best ones would go and you'd be left with whatever there was left, So yeah, a very odd thing, because I wasn't trained as an English teacher at all, and my PGCE was in drama. I did that. There was a small part of it that you might have to teach some English. So we'll do 4 weeks of stuff on English, which was 4 sessions, 4 lessons, if you like, 4 lectures on English teaching. And that was it, really. So with my 4 lectures in tow and a stock cupboard, and all the English teachers would go to the pub on a Friday, and that's where I did most of my finding out about English, really. English teaching was in the pub, and that would be a good idea. Yeah, let's do a bit of that. Yeah, that's fine. And it's a very odd way of approaching it. It's absolutely lovely for someone like me, who's a maverick teacher, who enjoyed that approach. But I'm not sure it was much good for the pupils I was teaching. I mean, at parents' evenings, I'd get strange questions like, how are you teaching them to read and things like that? Really? Yeah. Oh, should I be doing some of that? I didn't know they couldn't read. Well, they can read, but I mean, improve their reading, Yeah. So I've got a scale in the book where I look at from the most anarchic approach of teaching, which my start in teaching was the anarchic. The teacher does it all in any order, the way they want to, whatever they want to the most controlled form of teaching, which is following a script like you would do if you're in a call center. The head of department sitting there in the classroom, checking your on script all the way through, including the questions you might ask and answers you might give, whatever it happens to be. So from the anarchic to the authoritarian, if you like, and I've got 10 points in between, and try and get people to judge where they are in their department or their school, and where perhaps they think they ought to be. And my thoughts have moved from, yes, it's great for the teacher to be as anarchic as possible, but I think for the students, we need to be far more together than I was at the beginning, and far more lucid in our curriculum narratives, the way they hold together, and so that children get messages that are consistent, that are joined up thinking, that enable them to think about concepts over time. So it's not just a set of information, one damn thing after another, learn it, disconnected nuggets of knowledge, if you like. It's actually concepts, ideas, thoughts that take time to grow, and that's more of a proper education. And to me, the role of a curriculum is to actually enable kids. I call them kids. What do you call them? Pupils, students? To enable students to really get a hold of the terrain of the subjects they are learning about.
Yeah, thank you. I was just reading in your introduction, you said you loved the freedom. I was an artist.
And absolutely. And it's the strange thing about schools, of course, that no matter what we say or do outside of the classroom, we can close that classroom door and do as we damn well want until the learn walk people can turn up, and open the door and quickly, everyone back in your right, we're actually doing this, and I'm going to ask you some questions when I've been sleeping until this moment. You can do what you damn well like to a point, but the team playing aspect of it is underplayed because we get no time to work together. The amount of time we have out of the classroom is minimal, and then the amount of time we have together to actually work together creatively and in any depth whatsoever is minimal. And you take out meetings and staff meetings, etc., which tend to be administrative, then how much time do we actually get to work together? So the pressure is on people to just make things up as they go along in the classroom, to hope for the best, or have a script. Have these are the PowerPoints you must use. We have bought this scheme of work in. You must follow the textbook. And that's all well and good if the textbook, the lessons you're teaching that have been scripted for you, or the PowerPoint slides actually chime with your knowledge and your way of teaching and what you want to teach. So we have this tension within us to somehow find, I think, a happy medium between the two, and that is the creative teacher being allowed to do their own thing, but within a team of people who share the same vision and are singing from the same hymn sheet, building the culture of the department they're working in the school they're working in, and have what I call buy-in. They really do share the curriculum vision of this school, which is why they have to teach in similar ways, similar things in a way that builds up over time for the pupils they teach. But it's certainly difficult.
How do you think curriculum leaders should deal with maverick teachers?
Hang on, is this retrospective? Or is this...
No. I mean, for example, we have a big diverse. There's a big diversity in the size of departments. We have an English department that maybe has 20 teachers. We might have a food tech department that has one on rotation, perhaps. And
I like the idea of a food tech teacher on rotation, like on a rotisserie, slowly basting themselves. Sorry, go on. Sorry, that's...
No.
Slightly surreal.
I've just got this image in my head now as well.
Yeah.
I can't move on. But that's as the students come in, there's something like a doner kebab or something.
Yeah. Well, no. Let's move on. Let's move on.
So anyway, going back to your autonomy scale.
Should we answer the question? How should we cope with these maverick teachers?
Yes.
Do you want me to answer that?
Yes, please. How do you cope with these maverick teachers?
Yeah, I think there's a book by, I think it's Matthew Syed, called Rebel Ideas, and it's about how you actually use people who have different viewpoints than the main, and actually value that. Now, obviously, we could get into sort of climate change denial and all that sort of discussion, and perhaps anti-vaxxers and all these sorts of things. I'm talking about in the confines of your school, your teachers have there, that actually the voices who sort of say no to this or no to that are very useful and should be embraced in that way, but not in a destructive sense, but in a constructive sense. They're very useful voices to have and not ignore. I don't mean, yeah, thank you for that, let's ignore it. We're going to do this. But actually to test out the quality of ideas that we all have. But what you do need to say to them at some point is, we all have to reach a conclusion. We all have to share the same viewpoint at some point in this process. So with the idea that all things can be aired, all things can be shared, that we're not here to just nod things through and do whatever the head of department or whoever is in charge of this particular process says in order to live a quiet life, and then we close our doors, etc. Because in the end, you're saying the important thing here is a shared culture, a shared view, because we want to improve the quality of education for the children we're teaching. So the focus has to be on the quality of education for the children, not the quality of how you live your life as a teacher and all that. There's a greater good, a common good, if you like, that we all have to bite our lip at points and say, okay, I will now calm this down. I will accept the viewpoint here, with the proviso that the next time you look at this, which is a continual process, curriculum is a continual process of design, that these things could be looked at again, and perhaps I was wrong, or perhaps I've been proven right, or perhaps the jury is still out, so it's never finished. And that's the thing, you haven't lost the argument, but we have put it off for a bit. So we're not going to teach that text, or we're not going to teach that in that order. We're going to teach it in different order, or we're not going to teach that to that year group. We're going to teach that later, whatever it happens to be, that much mayhem and disaster in that particular meeting,
What do you think is the biggest disruption to effective curriculum design?
It's teachers doing their own thing and not being able to really share the same viewpoint. I mean, it's something I see a lot, is the idea that it's not looked at very structurally. The curriculum is thought of as one damn thing after another, right? You're going to teach this, I'm going to teach that, and we just accept that someone knows how to teach it, etc., etc. Also, that there's no relationship between breadth and depth, that big concepts aren't thought about. So children have extreme difficulty traveling across the terrain, if you like. They might know bits and bobs here and there, like isolated chunks, but they don't really know how the whole thing hangs together. And that's what I most often see, if you like, that how the thing hangs together hasn't really been emphasized enough. And I mean, and I explore this in the book. I mean, I go through this in detail in the book, so it's difficult to explain it all here. But generally, if we're looking at, let's go to the example of the food tech teacher. The poor food tech teacher, there he is, there she is. 6 lessons, perhaps in year 7, 6 lessons in year 8, on a carousel with loads of other technology subjects, perhaps. And what do they teach? Well, for a start, the structure of the subject is letting them down, because there is not enough time to teach the subject. It is a tick box exercise to say we've taught a bit of food technology, if that's it. But let's say that we're happy with that. Okay, so it's a tick box exercise. Then how do we make it a rich exercise for the kids? Well, a rich exercise for the kids would be something that teaches them about the terrain of the world of cookery, the whole world of cookery, of course, the cuisines, international cuisine, different cultures, way of approaching it. But let's say we're in France, you're in Belgium, so it's perhaps a similar sort of thing to France. Let's say in France we only teach one school, and that's the French school. Well, how would the French school, the Escoffier school, or whatever we want to call it, how would they? Well, they'd start with sauces, perhaps making a roux, not making a shepherd's pie, or not making an apple pie, or not making a lasagna, or a curry, or whatever these things happen to be. They start with the idea that we're going to teach you how to create French cuisine, and we're going to teach you from the things that unite the subject together, which might be sources. I don't know, what are the things that unite your subject? What are the biggest ideas in your subject? So it might be you're teaching science, where perhaps you start with particles, with energy, with real explanations about what these different things are. I don't know, for drama teaching, it might be genre, different genres. Or obvious one, tragedy and comedy, the two drama masks, the big things that take us into a subject, to allow kids to be able to think beyond the specifics of what they're taught. Now, how all that hangs together is important, and I think that's the biggest difficulty schools have, is trying to work against timetable restrictions for some subjects. Some subjects get masses of time. English, for example, maths, masses of time. You could do loads of stuff there.
What advice have you got for leaders when they're beginning to write curriculum aims? But I guess in relation to priorities as well, when they first imagine a young leader or a younger leader, maybe less experienced, taking over a department, how do they prioritize what to focus on when they're writing their initial aims?
Yeah, it's because it's a circle, a revolution, and you're coming in the middle, no matter where you are. So your aims are already sort of dictated to you by what has happened before, where we are. So before your aims, perhaps you need an audit, looking out exactly where we are. But then you have, of course, the highfalutin aims, which is to say, right, okay, forgetting everything, let's just say the most important thing here is to join this thing up, to create the curriculum narrative, or the way that the thing hangs together. We need to ensure this curriculum that we are writing hangs together, not just on a website, not just on bits of paper, not just in the heads of our teachers, but in the minds of our students. And it needs to hang together there. That I think is the noble aim, if you like. the central aim that we need to start with is to say, does it make sense? How do we know that? Ask a kid. How does this work for you? Right, what does describe your curriculum? Just tell me when taught. Tell me about the sense of what you know about the things you've been taught. How does it hang together? So it's not a series of separate things. Oh, we did a bit of that, then we did a bit of that, then we did a bit of that, then then it was half term, then we did that. Did we do that? No, I can't remember. Yeah, we did that. And instead of that, it's a form of narrative, of understanding of the subject itself and what it means to be a student of that subject at this moment. In other words, where I have been, where I am, and where I'm going.
Thank you, Martin. We're going to have a very short break, but when we come back, we'll be focusing in more detail at what we can do as leaders and teachers to enhance the curriculum we're teaching, and indeed how to audit and maintain the quality of the content we have.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out! Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading!
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
Strike action dominates the news again, with a range of outlets reporting on disputes across England, Wales and Scotland. Whilst the NASUWT union reported 9 out of 10 teachers who voted in a ballot over pay voted in favour of strike action in England and Wales, the union also reported only a 42% turnout. This is below the threshold needed for lawful strike action. The union stated that whilst a strike would now not go ahead, the union remains in formal dispute with the government. The NEU is yet to release the results of its ballot and will also need to reach the 50% member turnout needed for lawful industrial action. In Scotland, the Scottish Secondary Teachers Association has warned of further strike action following walkouts by primary and secondary staff. It says it has no option unless the Scottish Government puts forward a suitable pay offer. The AIS Union and Scottish NASUWT members also aim to continue with strike action until an agreement is reached. Scottish Education Secretary Shirley-Ann Somerville maintains that the demand for a 10% pay rise continues to be unaffordable. Meanwhile, the University and College Union has announced 15 new strike days planned across 150 UK universities in February and March. It has said that a pay offer worth between 4 and 5% made during recent talks is not enough, although the group representing university employers says that the offer is actually worth up to 7%. This comes after the government announced that tuition fees in England will be frozen for another 2 years. Although this is good news for students, the strikes mean more disruption to courses already affected by the pandemic. However, the National Union of Students has been broadly supportive of the industrial action, at least so far. Away from strike action, there have been further stories focusing on what should be taught in schools. This time, the focus is on educating pupils in the dangers of social media in spreading messages that are misogynistic and deeply toxic. The HuffPost website reports on Labour MP Alex Davey-Jones, who called in Parliament for ministers to do more to stamp out Andrew Tate-style misogyny and to stop boys being brainwashed. The MP asked what was being done to tackle radicalisation of young men, but PM Rishi Sunak responded that he was proud that this government launched the world-leading, world-first online safety bill. He also made reference to the autumn statement announcement of £2 billion of extra funding to schools. Although he did not respond with any direct reference to Tate, the online safety bill is expected to complete its final stages in the Commons shortly, before heading to the House of Lords. New figures released recently show that school absences in December were almost double the annual rate and that this was due to illness. The absence rate, as reported in the Evening Standard, was 14.3% across state schools in the week beginning December the 12th, an increase from 7.8% across the year. The Department for Education in England said the increase was due to a rise in sick days as a result of winter illnesses such as flu, as well as COVID-19 and strep A infections such as scarlet fever. In the Channel Island of Jersey, BBC News reports that the government has brought in 11 UK supply teachers to cover for absent staff. The short-term and long-term measures have been put in place due to staffing shortages, and the supply teachers will cover for up to 2 terms. Short-term housing has been organised for those travelling to the island. The Jersey government said the current vacancy rate for Jersey was 4.3%, but that the long-term plan was to train, recruit, retain and upskill school staff. Finally, the Meanwhile in the Middle East section of the CNN website reports on the United Arab Emirates' plan to become the first Arab nation to teach about the Holocaust in its schools. The move has been praised by some and criticised by others. The nation revealed its plans in a recent tweet and intends to include Holocaust education in both primary and secondary schools. The UAE says it will work with Tel Aviv and Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Jerusalem, to help build the new curriculum. Whilst many see the move as part of the normalisation of relations with Israel, critics suggest that it does not reflect all of those living in the UAE, with many disagreeing with this policy. Full details of the story can be found on the CNN website, with comments on both sides explored in detail. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
This is 2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello, let's start the new year with investigating the power of artificial intelligence in education. A lot of people are asking, does your school block ChatGPT? First of all, what is it? Chat Generative Pre-trained Transformer, or GPT for short, is a piece of software designed to mimic talking to a person. The difference is, this person is super clever, and it's been trained by thousands of conversations in the past, and it remembers them all. There are lots of chatbots out there. GPT is popular with young people as the answers it gives are not only correct, but can be slightly different each time, so it's more difficult for a teacher to spot a copy and paste homework. Let's put it to the test with a couple of school questions. I'm using a screen reader to represent ChatGPT to give it a voice. Responses are usually in text and appear as if they're being typed really quickly. I asked, what are the registers in a processor? And I got...
Registers are a type of memory that is built into the central processing unit, CPU, of a computer. They are used to store data and instructions that the CPU needs to access quickly in order to perform its functions. There are different types of registers, each with a specific purpose. For example, the instruction register stores the current instruction that the CPU is executing, while the program counter register stores the address of the next instruction to be executed.
I'll stop GPT there as 3 paragraphs were given in this answer and it's only a 1 or 2 mark question. So I asked, can you tell me in 2 sentences? And I got...
Registers are small, high-speed memory units built into the central processing unit, CPU, of a computer that are used to store data and instructions. They allow the CPU to access and manipulate data and instructions quickly, enabling it to carry out complex tasks at high speeds.
Well, thank you, GPT. That's much more to the point. Powerful, right? How about, can you summarise Of Mice and Men?
Of Mice and Men is a novella by John Steinbeck, published in 1937. It tells the story of George Milton and Lenny Small, 2 displaced migrant ranch workers during the Great Depression in California. Despite their apparent differences, the 2 men are deeply bonded and rely on each other for companionship and support. The novella ends tragically when Lenny, a simple-minded man with a love for soft things, accidentally kills a ranch owner's wife while trying to touch a soft dress, and George is forced to make the difficult decision to euthanize Lenny before he can be punished for the crime.
That's fantastic. However, there's some words in there that are quite big, and my teacher would be quite suspicious that I copied and pasted it. So I'll ask, can you summarise Of Mice and Men simply?
Of Mice and Men is a story about 2 ranch workers, George and Lenny, who are travelling together and looking for work during the Great Depression. Lenny is a large, simple-minded man with a love for soft things, and George is his caretaker and protector. Despite their differences, the 2 men are deeply bonded and rely on each other for companionship and support. However, their relationship is ultimately tested when Lenny accidentally kills a ranch owner's wife, and George is forced to make a decision to protect Lenny from the consequences of his actions.
That's more like it. Now my homework's done, I think I just bought myself some more time on my games console. As always, I'd love to hear what you want to know about tech. Let us know at TT Radio Official. I'm Steve Woods, and that was 2 Minute Tech.
2 Minute Tech with Steve Woods, your tech briefing on Teachers Talk Radio.
Welcome back to the show. Today we are talking all about curriculum enhancement and design. You can get in contact with us at TT Radio Official or my personal handle at Jeff_Pedley on Twitter. And I am very pleased to be joined by Martin Robinson tonight, who has recently released a book called Curriculum Revolutions, which is available at John Catt Publications. Hello, Martin. Welcome back.
Thank you. Welcome back to you as well.
My next question, if I can find a way to put it, my next question is, how do leaders move from a reactive to a proactive curriculum, or are they both needed in equal measure?
Well, this is a hypothetical, of course, so it might be that you have to start off with a reactive because of the chaos around you. It might be completely proactive because you're beginning a new school, you're starting a new department or a new subject. So I don't know. Sorry to be of absolutely no help whatsoever. Yeah. I mean, the dream is to be as proactive as possible, obviously, but all the time things will happen. Things change, knowledge changes as we garner more knowledge. Syllabi change, exam syllabi change, things change. Beijing, Peking becomes Beijing. These things mean that you have to teach differently at points, and the content has to be different. So that has to be taken into account at points. And big philosophical changes take place depending on the government of the day, for example. So you have to be reactive, and you also, and your head comes in, they might be proactive and say, this is now what our curriculum vision.
You In respect of my next question, you've kind of alluded to this already, but you explore choosing the curriculum design team. Who should be on this design team?
Yeah, so each subject generally has its own curriculum design team. What I'm trying to avoid is going into an English department or a maths department or the bigger departments, let's say, where you have one person in charge of that particular key stage, another person in charge of that particular key stage, and someone else in charge of that key stage all year or particular book, or I'm in charge of percentages, so I'm going to write the stuff for percentages. In other words, the easiest thing to do is to split it all up. Say you do that, you do that, you do that, you do that, and of course you do not get joined up thinking. So straight away you've got one damn thing after another, because you've put the team together in that way. Everyone's being delegated an area too, and what you haven't done is think about how those areas knit together. And my thesis in the book is, if you like, that we must avoid, which is that there is no joined up thinking. We need joined up thinking.
I made a little note myself as well, that the idea that it was not design but awareness is what needs, is exactly what you say there about the different department members. You go away and you focus and you write this scheme and you design this area of the curriculum, and also be accountable and responsible for it.
But you're not, because everyone might look at it and then say, God, mine's better than this. I wrote my key stage 3 is much better than your key stage 4. So when I close the classroom door, I'm going to do what you've written down in my way, and sod the rest of you. It's encouraging that sort of reaction. It's competitive, if you like, rather than collaborative.
And that's why, do you think that's why schools then move towards the 10 on your autonomy scale to try and, I mean, the school that
it is. Look, let's say, look, just as I said, the anarchy has its attractions. So does the authoritarian have its attractions. For instance, if you've got a member of staff who's on a long-term illness, and someone has to come in halfway through the year to teach a lot of lessons, and let's say that person's not a subject specialist. Now, what do? It's better for them to have a script. It's better for the kids, for that teacher to have a script. I was persuaded, purloined, told to, if you like, told to teach music. Now, I can't teach music. I can't play an instrument. I mean, I can do a bit of karaoke, but and I had to teach year 7 music. Well, there's no way I could teach year 7 music in the anarchist approach, because I really don't know what's going on. So I need the authoritarian, absolutely, to be able to teach that subject, and even then barely got away with it, because some of those kids were far better than me at music than I could ever be. So what do you do? Now, if you've got a vast turnover of staff or non-specialists, then sticking to a good textbook. And there's the trouble, of course. What's the good textbook? And that's where people disagree and say, well, that's not necessarily a good textbook for us, which is why some schools and groups of schools, MATs, etc., have written their own textbooks, for particular subjects, or are in the process of doing that. Yeah, I can see the attraction of both. So this is why I say you've really got to think about these things, and not, yes, it's funny, the anarchist and the authoritarian, in some sort of diametrically opposed way, but there are strengths and weaknesses in both.
How important do you think extracurricular activities are in relation to curriculum content?
Well, they count. They do count. Certainly, I think from things I've seen post-pandemic, a lot of rich school experiences and getting kids back in the groove, if you like, and building on something personal for them, a sort of connection with the school. It's been done in the co-curricular work or the extracurricular work that schools do. You know, the enthusiasms, the orchestra, the outward bound courses, you know, the Duke of Edinburgh, things like that are so important. And whether you call it enrichment, you know, going to see a play or going to visit a castle or whatever it happens to be, you know, all those things I think are vital. But also some subjects, you know, like field work in geography or whatever it happens to be, have this part of them which are extracurricular, which is why it's not really extracurricular to me. It's co-curricular. I think it tends to be an independent schools call it co-curricular, but I think it's a better term. And I don't think I think there's far too much stuff which is examined and made important by exams and not enough that's thought about the stuff that isn't examined sometimes, and yet it's vital. It's vital for the enjoyment of the kids. The trouble is, of course, is the amount of time it takes for staff as well, you know, so it has to be back somewhere along the line. And but I think it's proving itself to be vital for some kids, especially now.
And alongside that, I'm saying alongside that, it's not a similar aim, but do you think extra intervention sessions have a place in our curriculum or in our system?
Yeah, always. You know, if a child has been away because of an illness again, or they've just moved to the school from another area because their family have moved or whatever, then interventions have to come in. I think where's a problem is when the intervention is en masse, where everyone in my class doesn't understand this, therefore they have to stay behind on Tuesday afternoon after school, or come in on the weekend, or come in over the holidays, because to me that's a curriculum issue. There's something wrong if they all have to do it. There's a problem there. And if it's every single child in the school doesn't understand photosynthesis by the time they get to year 11, you know there's a huge problem in your curriculum. You know, if it's just one or two kids, then you can bet your bottom dollar it's down to something that happened with those kids. If it's the entire year group or an entire class, or everyone taught by a certain teacher at a certain time, then you can say, right, okay, there are problems in how we get here to this point, therefore next year we've got to make sure we do things differently. That's the audit process and rethinking your curriculum.
I think all teachers like to think that they're teaching a knowledge-rich education. How do we know that we are?
I don't think all teachers do think that, but no, I think there'll be a number of teachers who would argue about the concept of knowledge-rich and whether it's a good thing or not. So this is not necessarily the place to have that argument, but I think there is enough cynicism, let's say, in parts to, and again, I think that's an important discussion to have. And I wouldn't venture away from it, except here, because I don't think we've necessarily got enough time. But I think that's an important discussion to have. But go on. I've interjected.
In your own words, just explain what do you understand as a knowledge-rich education?
You see, I said Ted said don't go down this route, so you immediately followed me down it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Or push me down it, push me along it, no less. Knowledge rich. Well, let's say what the argument might be. There is no such thing as people who don't teach knowledge. Everyone teaches knowledge. The suspicion is that knowledge rich might be an excuse for certain types of knowledge that might be seen by some people as class-based or race-based. In other words, dead white men, this sort of thing. And I wouldn't go along with saying that would be knowledge-rich or anything. There's also the knowledge skills debate. and whether some people say there's no such thing as skills, or skills are just practicing knowledge, and things like that. And then other people say, well, we need a skills-based curriculum based around topics and projects, project-based learning and PBL, and teach things like perhaps creativity, collaboration, everything beginning with C and all that. So to me, a knowledge-based curriculum, a knowledge-rich curriculum, is one that doesn't go down the 21st century skills route, but talks about the importance of subjects, the importance of framing knowledge through different lenses, of most of which are the subjects, but not all, and trying to make the understanding of those subjects as deep and broad as possible in the time that you have. Perhaps that is loose enough.
How can we measure the quality of our content?
Again, this all comes down to the importance of quality, but who decides what's good and what's bad? Who decides whether the quality is any good? And this comes down to, my answer to that is, you do. You're the teachers, you're the ones designing this, you decide whether the quality is any good or not. It has to be, the subjective has to be thought through. Is this a good enough thing to teach here, or are we just trying to get away with it, to get them through again the minimal we need in order to get them through an exam, or the maximal we need them to understand this subject, if you like, and they're not necessarily the same thing. So the quality is about what you're trying to do. Are you trying to teach them a subject, or are you trying to get them through an exam? Now, they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. You need to get them through the exam. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. I'm not saying that should never be an approach. But if it's your entire focus for the entire school life of that child, then you're not teaching a knowledge-rich, qualitative approach. You're just taking the lowest common denominator of shoving them through an exam, important though that is.
In your book, Curriculum Revolutions, what we're discussing today, you refer to knowledge trees quite often. What is a knowledge tree, and why are they important in curriculum design?
Right, well, you've heard of the tree of knowledge. It's kind of like that. A knowledge tree is, it's very difficult to describe it without showing you the picture. And this isn't TV, I hear. I have a strange thing. This is teacher talk radio, isn't it? So we have to rely on something which is extremely visual with talk.
We have to buy the book. That's what we do.
That's another thing.
I can see it fine here.
It's beautifully illustrated by David Goodwin, who's drawn me some trees. And let's say I've already given you some examples, but how you actually divide the curriculum up. So you do this at subject level. You have a tree called science, and then you might have two branches that come off there, with natural sciences being one and social sciences being another. And the social sciences might go off into sociology and, well, where would you put psychology? Then the other side, you have the natural sciences, and classically you have physics, biology, chemistry coming there. Now, let's say we already started doing this a bit with physics. How do we divide physics up? Well, we could divide it up into particles, energy, etc., etc. There's also the types of knowledge that you want to teach, and people will argue about this till the cows come home. I mean, what examples do you teach in English, for example? You tell me. What sort of knowledge do you teach in English?
What do you mean, splitting into a literature and language branch, and then from a language point of view going into grammar and analysis, etc.?
There you go. So it might be something like that. There's specialized knowledge, reasoning. There's all these things here. I'll just try. Actually, need to put a light on here. Exactly. There's inductive, deductive knowledges. There's the one that I always went with is practical and theoretical. So in drama, you have drama as practical subject and as a theoretical subject, the theory of drama. And I've written here that this has to be effective. It has to be useful. So it changes the way you teach something. So theory, for a start, would be in a classroom. Practical would be in a theatre or a workshop space, so we're doing theory is very different than we're doing practical. Procedural is another thing that people talk about. Procedural knowledge, disciplinary, substantive. These are the sorts of things that people divide knowledge up into. So it can be that I know some schools have said, right, substantive knowledge, disciplinary knowledge, those are the two distinctions you have to make in your curriculum for the whole school. And you end up with someone saying, well, what's it mean? What does it mean? Well, I've tried to explain it a bit in the book, what these different things are. But my argument is what is useful for the subject, not necessarily what is useful for someone to tell you that it's useful for you. So again, there's the balance between from below and from above. How do we get that balance right? And for me, if someone says substantive and disciplinary, and I try and impose that onto the subject of drama, I'd find it quite difficult. But if I say, look, theory and practical, because that's generally the way the subject is set up and thought about for years, then can I make that argument instead of disciplinary and substantive, and trying to make it fit around those terms? But the book discusses that. So if you're in a school which is asking you to do it one way, and you're in a subject area that doesn't quite fit with that, it might give you some ballast to say, well, look, what about this? Can I do this instead? But it's also then, where do you go with that? So you can add branches, and I'd leave it to you to add the next branches. You continue down that way. It's a visual treat, if you like, but it's an extremely useful way to think about moving from the abstract to the concrete and what goes on in the classroom as a way. Is this useful? So a geography teacher was doing this and finding it extremely useful, because geography is such a complex subject. It is at least 4 subjects within it. We know about physical and human geography generally. That's what us non-experts call it, but there are other aspects to it as well. So how would you divide that up, and would it affect the teaching of the subject?
And that's what I really like about that's what I really like about your book, the amount of visual metaphors, and it's the practical processes that you can use as a curriculum designer within there. And just referring to the foreword was written by Tom Sheraton, wasn't it? I'm just reading the quote from the back of his quote from the back of the book here. A powerful conceptual framework designed with the artful craftsmanship of a beautiful clock, an insightful understanding of how teachers thrive. And I also really like his within the foreword as well, his own metaphor that he uses for describing the challenge of curriculum leaders, trying to balancing time to design a curriculum alongside teachers, like attempting to re-engineer a fast car while driving it at full speed.
Yeah. Except it's not quite so dangerous. You're not gonna kill everyone, hopefully. Can't imagine.
We've had some tweets in over the last few days and today in reference to curriculum design. I asked the question specifically for heads of departments and heads of faculties to share when they first took on the responsibility, what were their first areas of focus within the curriculum. Just like to share a few of the quotes here, and feel free to comment in any shape or form.
Or not at all.
Or not at all. And just sit down and enjoy some of the.
Just let you do the rest of the show. Reading your tweets out loud. There you go.
Just yeah, so that you just sit back, you just disconnect, put your feet up, have a coffee. So, for example, Mr. Ross at Mr. Ross ICT. He said, when I became head of department, I looked at Key Stage 3 and looked to build the right skills and knowledge moving forward to GCSE. I had to firefight at Key Stage 4 for a few years as they didn't have the early knowledge base for the qualifications I wanted them to do.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, this is an interesting one because if you were to take Key Stage 4 as your starting point, and to work your way back and then just put in the key bits of knowledge they're lacking, you could say that is kind of using the GCSE exam to structure the whole curriculum. Now, in content heavy subjects, and people argue about aren't all the subjects content heavy, but we could argue that point. Perhaps not content heavy, but subjects with lots of stuff, then you can see why people want to do that. But he's got an interesting reverse around there, because he's subtly talking about something that might be slightly different. We're only judging him from a half-heard tweet, or I'm only judging him from a half-heard tweet. So I do not want to say this is what he has done or he is thinking this. But foundational knowledge is vital. And Key Stage 3 is, in secondary schools, is a great time for teaching foundational knowledge. Middle schools are and prep schools go up to 13, and places like that is slightly different. And you could argue that primary schools, a lot of it should be foundational knowledge, but these are all issues to think about. But foundational knowledge, the knowledge by which, what I call in the book, further up the triangle, and that's the upside down triangle that isn't upside down. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, read the book.
Buy the book. John Catt Publications. I have a tweet here from Mr. Hall's Maths. He takes a resource focus. My first area of focus was looking at the resources that each individual teacher wished they had and then budgeted within reason to support that. Next was the curriculum. I'm going from top down. I know the end game, so we're planning based around that. Kirsty Hare at khare_business education. I took time to observe the department, to learn what was working and where key development areas were, spoke to staff and pupils, then gradually implemented change so that everybody was on the same page. I started in February and then waited until a new timetable to make changes. And at Miss_G Johnston said, I got everybody contributing to shared schemes of work. That's no. This is why I've got to be careful about commenting, because I could be trashing some entire oeuvre based on a couple of sentences on a tweet, and I don't think that's fair, really. I mean, in the abstract, the thing about buy-in for me is important, but please, I can understand in different situations which you go into why the idea is, in the short term, perhaps we have to make changes. We're going to do it my way or the highway. It's my way or the highway, and you're all going to come around to my way of thinking. I can understand why someone's to do that, and especially if you haven't got any time as departments to work together. How do we make that time, I think, is one of the issues, and a lot of that is built around the idea of trust. I was just about to say that we haven't really talked about the social dynamics of a department in the detail, but what I like about things that we've explored today, it's honest, it's open and honest. You've talked a few times about, we are so independent inside that classroom. We shut the door and we can say all the right things and we can tick all the right boxes, but we are masters of our classroom. And I think that's what's so good about the processes and the toolkit that you've developed here, is that it allows honest discussions and areas of weakness and all of this, but in an environment or within a system or a structure, indeed, that still is moving things forward. Is still progressive.
Yeah, it's by being open with each other and building a high trust environment. I think is the only way to really structure a very strong curriculum. Because of that, I close the door and do what I damn well like. Even if you give me a script, I can ignore it. Until you come in and I go, unless you video me all the time, and then you've got to watch me all the bloody time on that video. So so if you're like that, if you really want to do it, why not do it yourself? Why don't you just get in there and just teach it yourself from a screen or you want to do, Big Brother? I don't know. It really needs the buy-in from all members of staff. Without the buy-in, I don't think you can ever have a system that works at its peak. And therefore, to get buy-in, you've got to have open debate and open discussion. But like I said before, with the proviso that we have to come to decisions, and we have to do this by a certain time. But I think it's worth giving that time. And I think it's David Dido or someone who recommended at least an hour a week in a school for your teachers to talk about curriculum together, to work this through. Now, the process about talking about curriculum is that we can talk and talk and talk and never get anywhere, but at least we've had the discussion. What I've done with the book is give you a structure for those talks, so decisions are made.
Martin, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy week to talk about curriculum revolutions, and and thank you so much for sharing your comments with us over this hour.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Jeff. Thank you, Jeff, for giving up your time for me.
You're welcome.
To sell my wares on your delightful show. Thank you.
So, without further ado, I suppose I better mention where you can pick up a copy of his book. His book is called Curriculum Revolutions. It's available through John Catt Educational, a practical guide to enhancing what you teach. The John Catt website you can find johncattbookshop.com. And also, if you'd like to keep informed with Martin himself, he has his Twitter at Trivium21C, at Trivium 21st Century. So I'll just say that again, at TRIVIUM21C, and you can keep informed of all updates of his new publications as well. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's been a very interesting talk all about curriculum design, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye bye.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, a leading publisher of books, directories, educational guides and magazines specifically aimed at forward-thinking schools in the UK and beyond. Have you checked out their latest releases? Don't miss out! johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading!